Good evening, everyone. My name is Martin Sinclair, and I am here to discuss the 12 red flags to watch out for on a first date. We've all been there, the excitement, the butterflies, the anticipation, but it's also important to be aware of the possible hazards that might be lying in wait. The first red flag is a lack of communication. It's important to feel comfortable talking to your date, and if there's an awkwardness or lack of communication, it could be an indicator that something is wrong. Similarly, if your date talks too much or is overly controlling of the conversation, it could be another sign that something isn't quite right. The second red flag to watch out for is dishonesty. If your date is lying about even small things, it could be a sign of bigger issues. It's important to be able to trust your date, and if they're not being honest, it's a huge red flag. The third red flag is a disregard for boundaries. If your date is pushing you to do things you're not comfortable with, it's a sign that they don't respect your boundaries and could be a warning sign of a more serious problem. The fourth red flag is a lack of respect. If your date is rude, dismissive, or otherwise disrespectful, it's a sign that they don't have any regard for your feelings or opinions, and that could be a sign of a bigger problem. The fifth red flag is a lack of common interests. It's important to have some common interests with your date, and if you find that you have nothing in common, it could be a sign that you're not compatible and it's time to move on. The sixth red flag is a lack of respect for self. If your date is always putting themselves down or excessively worrying about their appearance, it could be an indicator that they don't have a healthy self-image, and that could be a problem. The seventh red flag is a lack of ambition. If your date is not motivated and doesn't have any goals, it could be a sign that they're not emotionally mature enough to be in a relationship. The eighth red flag is a lack of empathy. If your date doesn't seem to care about your feelings or the feelings of others, it's a sign that they're not emotionally mature enough to be in a relationship. The ninth red flag is a lack of trust. If your date is constantly asking for reassurance or doesn't seem to trust you, it could be a sign that there's something wrong. The 10th red flag is a lack of consistency. If your date is constantly changing their plans or doesn't seem to keep their word, it's a sign that they're unreliable and not someone you can depend on. The 11th red flag is a lack of balance. If your date is trying to control every aspect of the relationship or is always taking and never giving, it's a sign that they're not mature enough to be in a relationship. The 12th and final red flag is a lack of respect for others. If your date is always talking down to people or is overly critical, it's a sign that they don't have any respect for others, and it could be a sign of a bigger problem. These are just some of the red flags to watch out for on a first date. Remember, communication is key, so it's important to be able to talk to your date and be aware of any potential problems. If you find any of these red flags, it might be time to move on and look for someone better. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for more helpful tips and advice.